The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base as Sarah Chen stepped off the transport vehicle. Her uniform was crisp and new, but her boots carried no shine from years of service. At 28, she looked younger than most officers who walked these grounds. The other personnel barely glanced her way as she pulled her single duffel bag over her shoulder. "Another desk officer," muttered Lieutenant Rodriguez to his companion as they watched her navigate toward the main building. Probably some admiral's daughter getting an easy posting. Sarah ignored the whispers that followed her. She had heard them before at every base, every assignment. Her slight frame and quiet demeanor had always invited assumptions. People saw what they wanted to see. A young woman who looked lost among the seasoned veterans. The reception area buzzed with activity. Sailors moved with purpose, their conversations mixing technical jargon with casual banter. Sarah approached the information desk where a bored-looking petty officer was shuffling papers. "I'm here for assignment," Sarah said simply, presenting her orders. The petty officer glanced at the papers without real interest. "Commander Williams will see you. 3rd floor, room 304. Elevator's broken, so you'll need to take the stairs." Sarah nodded and headed toward the stairwell. Behind her, she heard someone comment about fresh meat and another pencil pusher. She had learned long ago that responding to such remarks only made things worse. Better to let her work speak for itself. The climb to the 3rd floor gave her time to observe her new surroundings. Through the windows, she could see the harbor where massive ships sat anchored. Destroyers, cruisers, and supply vessels created an impressive display of naval power. This was one of the most important bases in the Pacific Fleet, responsible for coordinating operations across thousands of miles of ocean. Commander Williams was a stern man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes. His office walls were covered with commendations and photographs from various deployments. He looked up from his computer as Sarah knocked on his open door. "Come in," he said, his tone neutral. "You must be our new logistics coordinator." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, standing at attention. Williams studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I'll be honest with you, Chen. This isn't exactly a high-profile position. You'll be handling supply chain coordination, inventory management, basic administrative work. Nothing too challenging." Sarah maintained her professional composure despite the dismissive tone. "I understand, sir. I'm here to do whatever the Navy needs." "Good attitude," Williams said, though he sounded unconvinced. "Your supervisor will be Lieutenant Commander Parker. He'll show you around and get you settled. Any questions?" "No, sir." "Dismissed." As Sarah left the office, she could feel Williams' doubt lingering in the air. It was a familiar feeling, one that had followed her throughout her career. People looked at her resume and saw standard assignments, routine positions, nothing that screamed exceptional talent or leadership potential. Lieutenant Commander Parker was waiting for her in the hallway. He was a tall man with an easy smile, though Sarah detected a hint of resignation in his eyes. Probably another supervisor who had requested experienced personnel and received someone he viewed as inadequate. "Welcome to the team," Parker said, extending his hand. "I hope you're ready for some serious paperwork. This place runs on documentation, and we're always behind." As they walked through the corridors, Parker pointed out various departments and explained the base's structure. Sarah listened carefully, asking occasional questions that revealed her attention to detail. The base was indeed complex, with multiple commands operating under one roof. "Your workstation is here," Parker said, leading her to a small cubicle in a room filled with similar desks. "You'll be sharing space with 3 other logistics personnel. They're all good people, though they might seem a bit skeptical at first. New people don't always work out in this environment." Sarah settled into her chair and began examining the files that had been left for her review. The work seemed straightforward enough, tracking supply shipments, coordinating delivery schedules, ensuring proper inventory levels. Not exactly the most exciting assignment, but every job in the Navy served a purpose. During her lunch break, Sarah sat alone in the cafeteria, reviewing base directories and organizational charts. She wanted to understand how everything connected, how decisions flowed through the command structure. Her colleagues gave her polite nods, but kept their distance, probably waiting to see if she would last more than a few weeks. "Don't take it personally," said a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see a young sailor with a friendly face. I'm Petty Officer Martinez. People here are just cautious with new arrivals. We've had some folks who couldn't handle the pace. I appreciate the advice, Sarah replied. I'm just trying to learn how everything works. Smart approach, Martinez said. This place can be overwhelming if you don't understand the big picture. We handle logistics for the entire Pacific Fleet. What happens here affects operations halfway around the world. Sarah nodded, filing away this information. The scope of the operation was indeed impressive, much larger than anything she had worked with before. Each supply order, each shipping manifest, each inventory report contributed to maintaining America's naval presence across the Pacific. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah dove into her assigned tasks. She noticed several inefficiencies in the current systems, small problems that probably cost time and resources. For now, she kept her observations to herself. New arrivals, who immediately started suggesting changes, rarely lasted long in military environments. The day ended quietly, with most personnel heading home to their families or off-base housing. Sarah remained at her desk a bit longer, familiarizing herself with the computer systems and filing procedures. She wanted to be productive from day one, even if nobody expected much from her. Walking to her temporary quarters that evening, Sarah reflected on her first day. The base operated with military precision, but she had detected underlying tensions and resource constraints that weren't immediately obvious. These were the kinds of challenges that interested her, complex problems that required careful analysis and creative solutions. Tomorrow would bring more routine assignments, more skeptical glances, more whispered assumptions about her capabilities. Sarah was used to this pattern. She had learned patience over the years, understanding that respect had to be earned one small task at a time. What nobody at the base knew yet was that Sarah Chen had been earning that respect in ways they couldn't imagine, in places they would never know about. For now, she was content to be underestimated. It made her job easier. Sarah's second week at the base fell into a predictable rhythm. She arrived early each morning, completed her assigned tasks efficiently, and stayed late to study procedural manuals. Her colleagues had warmed to her slightly, appreciating that she didn't complain about the workload or ask too many questions during busy periods. She's quiet, but she gets things done, she overheard Lieutenant Parker telling another supervisor. No drama, no excuses. I can work with that. The comment pleased Sarah more than Parker might have expected. In her experience, being reliable was the first step toward gaining trust. She had learned to value competence over flash, substance over style. Her current role might seem mundane to outsiders, but she was beginning to understand the base's complex logistics network. During her lunch breaks, Sarah often walked to different parts of the facility: the motor pool, the communications center, the maintenance workshops. Each department played a crucial role in keeping the fleet operational. She introduced herself politely to various personnel, learning their names and understanding their challenges. "You're the new logistics coordinator," said Chief Petty Officer Thompson when Sarah visited the supply warehouse. "Heard good things about your work. Finally got someone who understands how to read a shipping manifest properly." "Thank you, Chief," Sarah replied. "I'm still learning how everything connects together. Your department seems to handle an enormous volume of materials." Thompson nodded grimly. "More than we should, honestly. Budget constraints mean we're always running lean. One supply chain, disruption, and we're scrambling to keep operations running." Sarah made mental notes about resource limitations and potential vulnerabilities. Every organization had weak points, and understanding them was essential for effective planning. She was beginning to see patterns in the base's operations that others might miss. Her reputation for reliability began spreading through the lower ranks. Sailors appreciated that she processed their requests quickly and accurately. Unlike some administrative personnel who treated paperwork as a burden, Sarah understood that each form represented real people with real needs. "Chen's different," Petty Officer Martinez told his friends. "She actually listens when you explain a problem. Most office types just rubber stamp everything without thinking." These small endorsements mattered more than Sarah let on. Enlisted personnel were the backbone of military operations. and earning their respect was crucial for anyone hoping to be effective in a leadership role. She had learned this lesson early in her career and never forgotten it. One afternoon, a crisis emerged that tested everyone's abilities. A supply ship had been delayed by weather, leaving the base short on critical maintenance parts. Several vessels were scheduled to deploy within days but couldn't leave port without proper servicing. "We need alternatives, and we need them fast," Lieutenant Commander Parker announced to the logistics team. "I want everyone brainstorming solutions. Check every supplier, every warehouse, every possible source." While her colleagues frantically made phone calls and searched databases, Sarah approached the problem differently. She had been studying the base's historical records and noticed patterns in how similar situations had been resolved. More importantly, she had been building relationships with personnel at other facilities. "Sir," Sarah said quietly to Parker, "I think I might have a solution." Parker looked up from his computer, stress evident on his face. "I'm listening." "There's a supply depot in San Diego that maintains emergency stockpiles for Pacific Fleet operations. They have the parts we need, but they're reserved for crisis situations. If we can demonstrate operational necessity, they might release them." "How do you know about emergency stockpiles?" Parker asked, his tone curious rather than suspicious. "I've been studying fleet-wide logistics procedures," Sarah replied simply. "The depot commander is Captain Morrison. I could contact him and explain our situation." Parker hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Do it. But if this doesn't work, we're all going to look foolish." Sarah made the call, speaking with Captain Morrison's staff, and eventually, the captain himself. Her presentation was clear and professional, outlining the operational impact of the delayed supplies and requesting emergency assistance. Within an hour, she had secured approval for the parts transfer. "How did you manage that?" asked one of her colleagues as they watched the confirmation email arrive. "Morrison's supposed to be impossible to deal with." "I explained the situation clearly and provided all the necessary documentation," Sarah said. "People want to help when they understand the real stakes." The parts arrived the next day, allowing the scheduled deployments to proceed on time. Parker submitted a commendation letter highlighting Sarah's quick thinking and initiative. For the first time since her arrival, people began looking at her with genuine respect, rather than polite tolerance. "Nice work on the supply crisis, Commander," Williams said when he encountered Sarah in the hallway. "Parker tells me you saved us from a significant operational delay." "Just doing my job, sir," Sarah replied. "Well, keep it up. We need more people who can think creatively under pressure." As Williams walked away, Sarah reflected on how quickly perceptions could change. One successful problem-solving effort had elevated her from adequate to promising in the eyes of her supervisors. She knew this was just the beginning, though. Real respect required consistent performance over time. That evening, Sarah received an encrypted message on her personal communication device. The sender was identified only by a coded designation she recognized immediately. The message was brief but significant. "Monitoring your progress. Integration proceeding as planned. Maintain current profile." Sarah deleted the message and continued her evening routine as if nothing had happened. To any observer, she was simply a dedicated logistics coordinator reviewing files and preparing for the next day's assignments. The truth, as always, remained hidden beneath layers of careful misdirection. Her colleagues were beginning to see her as a valuable team member, someone who could be relied upon in difficult situations. This trust would prove essential for what lay ahead. Sarah understood that her real mission was just beginning, and everything she had accomplished so far was merely preparation for much greater challenges. The base operated on multiple levels, with official procedures masking more complex realities. Sarah was gradually gaining access to information that revealed the true scope of Pacific Fleet operations. Supply chains, deployment schedules, communication protocols. Each piece of data contributed to a larger picture that few people were privileged to see. As she settled into her quarters that night, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 1 of her assignment was progressing smoothly. She had established herself as competent and reliable without drawing unwanted attention. The mockery, and dismissive comments from her first days had given way to professional respect and growing responsibility. What her colleagues didn't know was that Sarah Chen's capabilities extended far beyond logistics coordination. Her quiet competence masked years of specialized training and experience in operations that never appeared in official records. The Navy had invested significant resources in preparing her for assignments that demanded both technical expertise and absolute discretion. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to demonstrate her value to the base's mission. Sarah looked forward to continuing her careful integration into the command structure, building the trust and access that would be essential for the tasks that lay ahead. 3 weeks into her assignment, Sarah had become indispensable to the logistics department. Her ability to solve complex supply chain problems had earned her increasing responsibility and access to sensitive operational information. What had started as routine administrative work was evolving into something much more significant. "I want Chen on the Fleet Readiness Briefing Team," Lieutenant Commander Parker announced during the weekly staff meeting. "She's demonstrated excellent analytical skills and has a better grasp of our supply capabilities than anyone else in the department." The other officers exchanged glances. Fleet readiness briefings were typically reserved for senior personnel with years of experience. Assigning a newcomer to such an important role was unusual. But Parker's confidence in Sarah had grown considerably. "Are you sure she's ready for that level of responsibility?" asked Lieutenant Rodriguez, who still harbored doubts about Sarah's qualifications. "Those briefings go directly to Admiral Harrison. There's no room for errors." "Chen doesn't make errors," Parker replied firmly. "In 3 weeks, she's handled everything we've thrown at her without a single mistake. I trust her judgment more than some people who've been here for years." Sarah accepted the assignment with her characteristic calm professionalism, but internally she was pleased. Access to fleet readiness information would provide valuable insights into Pacific Fleet operations. Her handlers would be very interested in the intelligence she could gather from this position. The briefing preparation required Sarah to analyze deployment schedules, maintenance requirements, and supply chain status for dozens of vessels. She worked closely with department heads from across the base, building relationships that would prove invaluable for her real mission. Each conversation revealed new details about fleet capabilities and operational planning. "These numbers don't look right," Sarah mentioned to Chief Thompson during a supply inventory review. "We're showing critical shortages in several categories, but the expenditure reports suggest normal consumption levels." Thompson studied the data Sarah had compiled. "You're right. Someone's been cooking the books, probably to hide inefficiencies in the procurement process. This could affect our ability to support extended deployments." Sarah documented the discrepancies carefully, understanding that accurate information was crucial for operational planning. Her meticulous attention to detail was uncovering problems that had been hidden for months. The base's senior leadership needed to know about these issues, but she had to present her findings diplomatically. "Excellent work on the readiness analysis," Commander Williams told Sarah after reviewing her first briefing report. "You've identified several potential vulnerabilities that we hadn't recognized. I'm recommending you for expanded access to operational planning materials." The expanded access was exactly what Sarah had been hoping for. Each level of clearance brought her closer to the kind of strategic intelligence that her true employers valued most. She was walking a careful line between appearing competent and avoiding suspicion about her rapid advancement. During her off-duty hours, Sarah continued building relationships with personnel throughout the base. She volunteered for community service projects and attended social events, gradually becoming part of the base's informal networks. These connections provided access to information that never appeared in official reports. "You know, Chen, you're not what I expected," said Lieutenant Martinez during a base barbecue. "When you first arrived, I figured you for another career climber looking for an easy assignment. But you actually care about the mission." "The mission is what matters," Sarah replied. "Individual careers are less important than keeping the fleet operational." These conversations revealed underlying tensions within the base's command structure. Budget pressures, personnel shortages, and operational demands were creating stress throughout the organization. Sarah made mental notes about these vulnerabilities while maintaining her helpful, professional demeanor. Her encrypted communications with her handlers had become more frequent and detailed. The intelligence she was gathering about Pacific Fleet operations was proving valuable for strategic planning at the highest levels. Each report she submitted was carefully analyzed and incorporated into larger assessments of naval capabilities. One evening, Sarah discovered something that changed her understanding of her assignment entirely. While reviewing classified deployment schedules, she noticed patterns that suggested a major operation was being planned. Ships were being positioned across the Pacific in configurations that indicated coordinated action rather than routine patrols. The implications were staggering. If her analysis was correct, the Pacific Fleet was preparing for a significant military engagement. The supply requirements, personnel movements, and communication protocols all pointed toward a major operation within the next several months. This was the kind of intelligence that could alter the balance of power in the region. Sarah faced a difficult decision. Her handlers would want this information immediately, but transmitting such sensitive data carried enormous risks. If she were discovered, it would compromise not only her mission but potentially endanger other assets throughout the fleet. She needed to find a way to communicate her findings without exposing herself to detection. The solution came from an unexpected source. During a routine supply coordination meeting, Sarah learned that she would be accompanying a delegation to a logistics conference in Hawaii. The conference would bring together personnel from bases throughout the Pacific, providing perfect cover for an intelligence handoff. "This is a great opportunity for you," Parker told her. "You'll be representing our base at a high-level planning session. The experience will be invaluable for your career development." Sarah accepted the assignment enthusiastically, knowing that the conference would allow her to pass crucial intelligence to her handlers while maintaining her cover. The timing was perfect, as her analysis of the fleet's preparations was becoming more detailed and urgent. As her departure date approached, Sarah reflected on how much her situation had changed since her arrival. She had transformed from a dismissed newcomer to a trusted member of the base's leadership team. Her colleagues now sought her opinions on complex logistical problems and included her in strategic planning discussions. "I have to admit, I was wrong about you," Lieutenant Rodriguez told her during a final briefing before her trip. "You've proven yourself to be one of the most capable officers we've had in logistics. I'm glad you're on our team." The irony of Rodriguez's comment wasn't lost on Sarah. He was praising her competence while remaining completely unaware of her true loyalties. She had successfully integrated herself into the base's operations while maintaining her cover identity. Her handlers had trained her well for this kind of long-term infiltration. The night before her departure, Sarah received another encrypted message. "Conference contact confirmed. Prepare comprehensive briefing on fleet readiness and operational planning. Priority: deployment schedules and supply chain vulnerabilities." Sarah spent her last evening at the base organizing her intelligence into a format suitable for transmission. Months of careful observation and analysis had produced a detailed picture of Pacific Fleet capabilities and intentions. The information she carried would be invaluable for strategic planning by forces that viewed the U.S. Navy as a potential adversary. As she packed her bags, Sarah considered the next phase of her mission. The Hawaii conference would mark a turning point in her assignment, transitioning from intelligence gathering to active participation in operational planning. Her success so far had earned her access to the highest levels of fleet operations, positioning her to influence decisions that could affect global security. The base personnel who had initially mocked her arrival would be shocked to learn her true identity and purpose. Sarah Chen was not the inexperienced logistics coordinator they believed her to be. She was a highly trained operative working for interests that extended far beyond the United States Navy, and her mission was just beginning to unfold. The flight to Hawaii gave Sarah time to finalize her intelligence briefing while maintaining the appearance of preparing for a legitimate logistics conference. Her fellow passengers included officers from bases throughout the Pacific, many of whom had heard about the promising new coordinator who had solved several complex supply chain problems. "You're Chen from Pearl Base, right?" asked Captain Peterson from the Guam facility. "I heard about your work on the emergency parts crisis. Impressive problem-solving for someone so new to Pacific operations." Sarah smiled modestly. "I was fortunate to have good mentors and access to the right resources. The Pacific Fleet's logistics network is remarkably sophisticated once you understand how all the pieces connect." These casual conversations provided additional intelligence opportunities. Each officer shared insights about their base's capabilities, challenges, and operational priorities. Sarah listened carefully while contributing just enough information to maintain the appearance of collegial exchange. The conference hotel in Honolulu was bustling with military personnel from across the Pacific region. Sarah checked into her room and immediately began implementing her communications protocol. The encrypted device hidden in her toiletry kit would allow secure contact with her handlers during the 3-day event. The opening reception provided perfect cover for intelligence activities. While networking with fellow logistics officers, Sarah identified her contact, a seemingly innocuous conference organizer who managed to engage her in conversation about supply chain innovations. "Ms. Chen, I've heard excellent things about your analytical work," the contact said during their brief interaction. "I'd love to discuss some of your insights in more detail. Perhaps we could meet for coffee tomorrow morning?" "I'd be happy to share what I've learned," Sarah replied, understanding that the meeting would involve much more than casual conversation about logistics procedures. The conference sessions themselves were surprisingly informative. High-ranking officers discussed strategic challenges facing the Pacific Fleet, including budget constraints, aging equipment, and evolving threat assessments. Sarah took detailed notes that would serve dual purposes: legitimate conference reporting and intelligence gathering. During a break between sessions, she encountered Admiral Richardson, the Pacific Fleet's deputy commander for logistics. His presentation on future operational requirements had revealed significant information about planned fleet modernization efforts. "Excellent questions during my presentation," Admiral Richardson told Sarah. "Your background research was obviously thorough. Are you considering a career in strategic planning?" "I find the big picture fascinating, sir," Sarah replied. "Understanding how individual logistics decisions support broader operational goals is what makes this work meaningful." "We need more officers with that perspective," the Admiral said. "I'll be interested to read your conference report when you return to base." That evening, Sarah met her contact at a quiet coffee shop away from the hotel. The conversation appeared to focus on supply chain management, but they were actually exchanging crucial intelligence about Pacific Fleet capabilities and intentions. "Your analysis of the deployment patterns is particularly valuable," the contact said quietly. "The timeline information confirms several strategic assessments. Your access to operational planning documents has proven invaluable." Sarah provided detailed briefings on fleet readiness levels, supply chain vulnerabilities, and the potential major operations she had discovered. The intelligence would be transmitted immediately to handlers who could use it for strategic planning purposes. "Continue building relationships and expanding your access," the contact instructed. "Your position is becoming increasingly valuable. The conference connections you're making will open new opportunities when you return to base." The second day of the conference focused on emerging logistics technologies and their potential military applications. Sarah participated actively in discussions while identifying additional intelligence targets. Several presentations revealed information about classified research programs and advanced capabilities being developed for fleet operations. During lunch, she sat with a group of senior logistics officers who were discussing recent changes in operational priorities. Their conversation revealed tensions between different commands and disagreements about resource allocation priorities. "The problem is coordination," complained Colonel Martinez from the Marine Logistics Command. "Each service is planning independently instead of integrating our capabilities. We're duplicating efforts and creating unnecessary vulnerabilities." Sarah absorbed these insights while contributing thoughtful questions that encouraged more detailed explanations. Her ability to engage seriously with complex operational issues had earned respect from officers who initially viewed her as too junior for such discussions. The final day's sessions addressed future challenges facing Pacific Fleet operations. Climate change, evolving threats, and technological developments were reshaping traditional approaches to naval logistics. Sarah realized that her intelligence gathering was providing insights into American military planning that extended years into the future. "Your questions have been consistently insightful," Admiral Richardson told her during the closing reception. "I'm going to recommend that your base consider you for the Pacific Fleet Logistics Planning Council. We need fresh perspectives on some challenging problems." The invitation to join such a high-level planning body exceeded Sarah's most optimistic expectations. Access to strategic planning discussions would provide intelligence opportunities beyond anything she had imagined when accepting this assignment. As the conference concluded, Sarah's fellow attendees treated her with new respect. Her thoughtful participation and analytical insights had established her reputation among Pacific Fleet logistics leadership. Several officers invited her to visit their facilities and continue collaborative discussions. "You've made quite an impression," Lieutenant Commander Parker told her during the flight back to base. "Admiral Richardson's recommendation carries significant weight. This could be a career-defining opportunity." Sarah expressed appropriate enthusiasm while internally calculating the intelligence value of expanded access to fleet planning processes. Her handlers would be pleased with her progress and eager to exploit her growing influence within the logistics community. The return to base felt different now. Personnel who had previously seen her as a competent but unremarkable coordinator now viewed her as someone with connections and influence at the highest levels. Her success at the conference had transformed her status within the base's informal hierarchy. "Chen's really going places," she overheard Chief Thompson telling another supervisor. "Admiral Richardson doesn't give recommendations lightly. She must have really impressed him with her knowledge and professionalism." That evening, Sarah received new instructions from her handlers. Conference intelligence extremely valuable. Continue current assignment while preparing for expanded access to strategic planning. Priority: Pacific Fleet modernization programs and operational doctrine development. The message confirmed that her mission was entering a new phase. Instead of simply gathering information about current operations, she would soon have opportunities to influence strategic planning processes. The potential for disrupting American naval capabilities was becoming significantly greater. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah reflected on the remarkable transformation of her position. What had begun as a low-level logistics assignment had evolved into access to the highest levels of Pacific Fleet planning. Her careful cultivation of relationships and demonstration of competence had opened doors that few officers ever experienced. The colleagues who had initially mocked her arrival would be astonished to learn about her growing influence within fleet operations. More importantly, they remained completely unaware of her true loyalties and the strategic intelligence she was providing to America's potential adversaries. The Hawaii conference had marked a crucial turning point in Sarah's mission. She was no longer simply an observer gathering information about fleet operations. She was becoming an insider with the potential to influence decisions that could affect global maritime security for years to come. Sarah's return from Hawaii marked the beginning of a new chapter in her infiltration mission. Admiral Richardson's recommendation had opened doors throughout the Pacific Fleet logistics community, and invitations to high-level planning sessions began arriving within days of her return to base. "This is unprecedented for someone at your level," Commander Williams told her during a private meeting. "The Pacific Fleet Logistics Planning Council typically includes only senior officers with decades of experience. Your inclusion represents extraordinary confidence in your abilities." Sarah accepted the opportunity with appropriate humility, while privately recognizing its immense intelligence value. The Planning Council had access to strategic information that could reshape her handlers' understanding of American naval capabilities and intentions throughout the Pacific region. Her first council meeting was scheduled for the following month at Pacific Fleet headquarters. The interim period provided opportunities to deepen her integration into base operations while gathering additional intelligence about local capabilities and vulnerabilities. "I want you to lead the quarterly readiness assessment," Lieutenant Commander Parker announced. "Your analytical skills and strategic perspective make you the obvious choice. This report goes directly to Fleet Command and influences deployment decisions." The readiness assessment required Sarah to analyze every aspect of base operations, from maintenance capabilities to personnel training levels. The comprehensive review provided detailed insights into American naval preparedness that her handlers would find invaluable for strategic planning purposes. During her analysis, Sarah discovered troubling patterns in maintenance scheduling and parts availability. Several critical systems were operating beyond recommended service intervals due to supply chain delays and budget constraints. The information revealed vulnerabilities that potential adversaries could exploit during extended operations. "These maintenance backlogs are more serious than previous reports indicated," Sarah told Parker during their review meeting. "We're accepting increased risk to maintain operational tempo. If supply chain disruptions continue, we could face significant capability gaps." Parker studied Sarah's analysis with growing concern. Your assessment is more thorough than anything we've produced before. The Fleet Command needs to understand these risks immediately. Sarah's report was forwarded to Admiral Harrison with strong endorsements from both Parker and Commander Williams. The detailed analysis of operational vulnerabilities established her reputation as an officer who could identify strategic problems that others missed. 2 weeks later, Sarah received a personal message from Admiral Richardson's staff requesting her input on Pacific Fleet modernization planning. The invitation to contribute to such high-level strategic discussions exceeded even her optimistic expectations. For mission development, this is remarkable progress. Her encrypted communication with handlers confirmed, "Your analysis of maintenance vulnerabilities has been particularly valuable. Continue expanding access while gathering intelligence on modernization timelines and technology development programs." The modernization planning sessions revealed the full scope of American naval transformation efforts in the Pacific. New ship classes, advanced weapon systems, and revolutionary logistics technologies were being developed to maintain naval supremacy against emerging threats. Sarah absorbed every detail while maintaining her cover as an enthusiastic logistics professional. "Your insights into supply chain resilience have been extremely valuable," Admiral Richardson told her during a break in the planning sessions. "We're incorporating your recommendations into the 5-year modernization plan. Your work could significantly improve fleet operational sustainability." The irony of contributing to American naval improvements while simultaneously providing intelligence to potential adversaries wasn't lost on Sarah. Her handlers were using her insights to develop countermeasures against the very capabilities she was helping to enhance back at base. Sarah's elevated status was becoming increasingly apparent. Officers who had previously ignored her now sought her opinions on complex operational issues. Her success at the strategic level was transforming perceptions of her capabilities and potential. Chen's analysis of the maintenance situation has generated significant attention at Fleet Headquarters, Commander Williams informed the senior staff. Admiral Harrison specifically commended her thoroughness and strategic thinking. "We need to ensure she has the resources necessary to continue this level of work." Sarah's expanded responsibilities provided access to classified information, systems that had previously been beyond her clearance level. Each new access granted revealed additional details about Pacific Fleet operations, from submarine deployment schedules to intelligence gathering activities. The information she was collecting painted a comprehensive picture of American naval capabilities and limitations throughout the Pacific region. Her handlers were particularly interested in communication protocols, logistics vulnerabilities, and intelligence collection methods that could be countered or exploited. During a routine inventory review, Sarah discovered evidence of a covert supply operation supporting classified missions. The material requirements and shipping patterns suggested special operations activities that weren't reflected in official deployment records. "These supply requisitions don't match any authorized operations," Sarah mentioned to Chief Thompson during their weekly coordination meeting. "The materials and delivery locations suggest activities that aren't in our normal tracking systems." Thompson looked uncomfortable with the observation. "Some operations require special handling procedures. Your clearance level might not include access to all mission details. I'd recommend not pursuing this particular line of analysis." Sarah understood the warning and filed the information for separate reporting to her handlers. Evidence of covert operations was extremely valuable intelligence that could help identify American special air activities throughout the region. Her position on the Pacific Fleet Logistics Planning Council was providing unprecedented access to strategic planning discussions. The Council's quarterly meetings revealed long-term operational concepts and resource allocation priorities that shaped American naval policy across the Pacific. "The modernization timeline is more aggressive than we initially anticipated," Sarah reported during an encrypted communication session. "New capabilities are being deployed faster than previous assessments suggested. The strategic implications are significant for regional power balance." Her handlers were pleased with the quality and scope of intelligence she was providing. The combination of tactical operational details and strategic planning insights was giving them comprehensive understanding of American naval intentions and capabilities. "Your Access continues to exceed expectations, the response indicated. Prepare for Phase 3 operations. Your position is becoming valuable enough to consider more active measures. Continue current activities while preparing for potential direct action opportunities. The message suggested that Sarah's mission might evolve beyond intelligence gathering toward active sabotage or disruption operations. Her integration into critical Pacific Fleet planning processes was creating opportunities to influence American naval capabilities in ways that could significantly advantage her true employers. As she reflected on her progress, Sarah realized how completely she had transformed her position since arriving as a dismissed newcomer. The colleagues who had initially mocked her now depended on her analysis for critical operational decisions. Her recommendations were shaping fleet-wide policies and resource allocation priorities. The strategic access she had gained represented years of careful planning and execution by her handlers. Every relationship she had built, every competency she had demonstrated, every trust she had earned was part of a comprehensive infiltration operation designed to penetrate the highest levels of American naval planning. What had begun as a simple logistics assignment had become one of the most successful intelligence operations ever conducted against the Pacific Fleet. Sarah's position at the center of strategic planning discussions provided opportunities to gather intelligence and potentially disrupt operations in ways that could alter the regional balance of power. The base personnel who had initially underestimated her capabilities remained unaware that they were now depending on analysis provided by an enemy operative. Sarah's careful cultivation of trust and competence had made her indispensable to operations she was secretly working to undermine. The quarterly Pacific Fleet Logistics Planning Council meeting was scheduled to address the most sensitive operational planning in years. Sarah arrived at Fleet headquarters with comprehensive briefing materials and encrypted communication devices hidden among her legitimate conference supplies. This meeting would provide access to intelligence that could fundamentally alter regional naval balance. Chen, I want you to lead the modernization timeline briefing, Admiral Richardson announced as the council convened. Your analysis of supply chain constraints and operational requirements has been exceptional. The timeline you've developed will guide fleet planning for the next decade. Sarah stood before the assembled flag officers, realizing that she was about to present strategic planning recommendations to the most senior logistics commanders in the Pacific Fleet. The intelligence value of this access was beyond anything her handlers had imagined when they first assigned her to this mission. As she began her presentation, Sarah noticed unusual tension among the senior officers. Several were exchanging glances and checking their communication devices more frequently than normal. Something was clearly developing that hadn't been part of the planned agenda. Before we continue, Admiral Richardson interrupted halfway through Sarah's briefing. I need to address a security matter that has come to our attention. All personnel except essential council members are dismissed until further notice. Sarah gathered her materials, assuming she was among the dismissed personnel, but Admiral Richardson gestured for her to remain seated. Not you, Chen. Your clearance has been upgraded for this discussion. What we're about to discuss requires your analytical expertise. The remaining officers represented the core of Pacific Fleet strategic planning. Sarah realized she was about to gain access to information at the highest classification levels, providing intelligence opportunities that exceeded her most optimistic projections. We've received credible intelligence about a potential security breach within Pacific Fleet operations, Admiral Richardson began. Someone with access to strategic planning information has been passing classified material to hostile intelligence services. The investigation has narrowed to a small number of suspects. Sarah maintained her professional composure while internally calculating the implications. If the investigation was closing in on her activities, she needed to prepare for immediate extraction. Her handlers had provided contingency protocols for exactly this situation. The breach appears to involve someone with recent access to modernization planning and strategic logistics information, Admiral Harrison added via secure video link. We're implementing new security protocols and reviewing all personnel with relevant clearances. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that she was participating in discussions about investigating her own intelligence activities. Her integration into the command structure was so complete that she was now trusted to help identify the security breach she was responsible for creating. "Chen, your analytical skills could be valuable for this investigation," Admiral Richardson continued. "You've worked closely with personnel throughout the logistics community and might notice patterns or behaviors that others would miss." Sarah accepted the assignment with appropriate seriousness, while privately recognizing the enormous risk it represented. Participating in the investigation of her own activities would require extraordinary care to avoid detection, while potentially providing opportunities to misdirect the inquiry. Over the following days, Sarah reviewed personnel files and security reports while secretly preparing for potential exposure. Her handlers had trained her for this possibility, providing cover stories and extraction procedures that could be implemented if her position became untenable. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns in information access and communication activities. Several personnel had been identified as having unusual contact patterns or unexplained access to classified materials. Sarah was relieved to find that her own activities hadn't yet attracted specific attention. The pattern suggests someone with recent elevation to high-level access, the lead investigator reported during a classified briefing. The timing coincides with several personnel changes and security clearance upgrades over the past 6 months. Sarah's clearance upgrade timeline fell directly within the suspected period, but so did several other officers who had gained new responsibilities or assignments. The investigation was proceeding methodically, but hadn't yet focused on any specific individuals. During her participation in the investigation, Sarah discovered that American counterintelligence capabilities were more sophisticated than her handlers had anticipated. The security protocols and monitoring systems in place were capable of detecting subtle patterns that could eventually expose her. Activities were implementing enhanced monitoring of all personnel with strategic access, Admiral Richardson announced. Communication patterns, access logs, and behavioral changes will be analyzed continuously. We will identify and eliminate this security threat. The enhanced monitoring represented a significant escalation in risk for Sarah's continued operations. Her handlers would need to modify their communication protocols and possibly consider extracting her before the investigation could identify her as the source of the intelligence leaks. That evening, Sarah received an urgent encrypted message. Investigation poses immediate threat to mission security. Prepare for potential extraction within 72 hours. Continue normal activities while implementing emergency protocols. The message confirmed Sarah's assessment that her position was becoming untenable. The investigation was likely to identify her eventually, especially with the enhanced monitoring systems being implemented. Her handlers were preparing to extract their most valuable Pacific Fleet asset before she could be exposed. As Sarah prepared for potential extraction, she reflected on the remarkable success of her infiltration mission. In less than 6 months, she had transformed from a dismissed newcomer to a trusted member of the Pacific Fleet's strategic planning community. The intelligence she had gathered during this period was invaluable for understanding American naval capabilities and intentions. The next morning brought an unexpected development that changed everything. Admiral Richardson called an emergency meeting of the investigation team with news that would alter the entire dynamic of the security inquiry. "We've received information that fundamentally changes our understanding of this situation," Admiral Richardson announced to the assembled investigators. "The intelligence breach we've been investigating is part of a much larger operation involving multiple assets throughout the Pacific Fleet." Sarah listened with growing alarm as Admiral Richardson described a comprehensive counterintelligence operation that had been monitoring suspected foreign intelligence activities for months. The investigation she had been participating in was actually a carefully orchestrated effort to identify and expose an entire spy network. "The individual we've been seeking has been under surveillance for several weeks," Admiral Richardson continued. "We've allowed their activities to continue in order to map the complete network and identify all participants. Today we're implementing the final phase of this operation." Sarah realized with horror that she had been walking into a trap. Her handler's confidence in her security had been misplaced. American counterintelligence had been aware of her activities and had been carefully building a case while allowing her to continue operating. "Agent Chen," Admiral Richardson said, turning to face her directly, "or should I say Commander Chen of the People's Liberation Army Navy Intelligence Division. You are under arrest for espionage against the United States. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her carefully constructed cover identity had been penetrated, and her true affiliations were known to American counterintelligence. Years of training and preparation had been compromised by security measures she had underestimated. As military police entered the conference room, Sarah's mind raced through her options. Extraction was no longer possible, and her handlers were likely unaware that their entire operation had been compromised. The colleagues who had trusted her with their most sensitive information now stared at her with expressions of shock and betrayal. Your infiltration of Pacific Fleet operations has been monitored since your arrival, Admiral Richardson continued. Every piece of intelligence you transmitted was intercepted and analyzed. Your handlers received carefully crafted disinformation instead of actual strategic information. The scope of the counterintelligence operation was becoming clear. Sarah hadn't been successfully gathering intelligence for her handlers. She had been unknowingly participating in a deception operation that fed false information to her true employers while exposing their intelligence networks. As the handcuffs were placed on her wrists, Sarah realized that the mockery she had endured during her first days at the base had been the least of her concerns. The real threat had come from the trust and respect she had earned, which had made her vulnerable to the very counterintelligence operation she had been trying to penetrate. As Sarah sat in the secure holding facility, her mind reeled from the devastating revelation. Everything she believed about her mission had been an illusion, carefully crafted by American counterintelligence. The intelligence she had transmitted, the access she had gained, the trust she had built, all of it had been orchestrated to serve American interests rather than her true employers. Admiral Richardson entered the interrogation room with a thick file folder and a confident expression. Commander Chen, I think it's time we had an honest conversation about your real identity and the scope of your operations. Sarah maintained her professional composure despite the circumstances. Years of training had prepared her for capture scenarios, though she had never expected to be caught so completely off guard. I believe there's been some mistake, Admiral. I'm a United States Navy logistics coordinator. Please, Commander. We both know that's not true. Admiral Richardson opened the file and spread photographs across the table. These images show you at the People's Liberation Army Navy Intelligence Academy in Qingdao. Your real name is Chen Wei-Ming, and you've been operating under deep cover for the past 8 years. The photographs were indeed genuine, showing Sarah during her intelligence training years before her infiltration mission began. The Americans had somehow obtained comprehensive information about her background and preparation. The security of Chinese intelligence operations had been compromised at the highest levels. Your infiltration strategy was quite sophisticated, Admiral Richardson continued. Establishing a credible naval career, building authentic relationships, demonstrating genuine competence. It took considerable planning and patience. Under different circumstances, I might have been impressed. Sarah realized that resistance was futile given the evidence arrayed against her. How long have you known? We identified you shortly after your arrival at the base, Admiral Richardson replied. Your handlers were careful but not careful enough. We've been monitoring Chinese intelligence activities in the Pacific for years. Your assignment fit a pattern we'd been expecting. The revelation that her mission had been compromised from the beginning was devastating. Every success she had achieved, every piece of access she had gained, had been allowed by American counterintelligence as part of a larger deception operation. The intelligence you transmitted to your handlers was carefully crafted disinformation, Admiral Richardson explained. False deployment schedules, fictional vulnerabilities, misleading modernization timelines, all designed to waste Chinese resources and misdirect strategic planning. Sarah began to understand the full scope of the counterintelligence operation. Her handlers had been receiving false information that would lead them to make incorrect assessments about American naval capabilities. The strategic advantage they believed they had gained was actually working against them. Your analytical skills were genuinely impressive, Admiral Richardson acknowledged. The reports you prepared were professionally excellent, even if they were based on false information we provided. You demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking we value in our officers. The compliment was both praise and insult, recognizing her abilities while emphasizing how completely she had been deceived. Sarah had believed she was successfully penetrating American operations, while actually serving their intelligence objectives. What happens now? Sarah asked, accepting the reality of her situation. That depends on several factors, Admiral Richardson replied. Your cooperation could be valuable for understanding Chinese intelligence operations and possibly identifying other assets in the region. The alternative would be prosecution for espionage, which carries significant consequences. Sarah considered her options carefully. Cooperation would mean betraying her handlers and potentially exposing other Chinese operatives. Refusal would likely result in decades of imprisonment. Neither choice offered any real hope of returning to her former life. I need to tell you something else, Admiral Richardson said, his tone becoming more serious. Something that changes everything about this situation. Sarah waited, wondering what additional revelations could possibly matter given her circumstances. You're not actually Chinese intelligence. Commander Chen, you're one of ours. The statement made no sense to Sarah. That's impossible. I was recruited by Chinese intelligence 8 years ago. I've been working for them throughout my career. No, you haven't. Admiral Richardson pulled out another file, this one marked with security classifications Sarah had never seen before. You've been working for us the entire time. The Chinese recruitment was part of a deep cover operation designed to place our asset within their intelligence network. Sarah stared at the documents, trying to process information that contradicted everything she believed about her identity and loyalties. That's not possible. I remember my recruitment, my training, my handlers. Your memories are real, but your understanding of them is incomplete, Admiral Richardson explained. You volunteered for an experimental program that required complete psychological conditioning. Your conscious mind believes you're Chinese intelligence, but your subconscious has been programmed to serve American interests. The implications were staggering. If Admiral Richardson was telling the truth, then Sarah's entire sense of identity had been constructed through psychological manipulation. She had been living a lie so complete that she had believed it herself. The intelligence you've been gathering and transmitting has indeed been valuable, Admiral Richardson continued, but not for the reasons you believed. Every piece of information you sent to your handlers was actually being received by American intelligence. Your reports on Chinese intelligence operations have been invaluable for our counterintelligence efforts. Sarah tried to reconcile this new information with her memories and experiences. The psychological conditioning must have been extraordinarily sophisticated to create such complete false beliefs about her own identity and loyalties. The mockery you experienced when you first arrived at the base was genuine, Admiral Richardson added. Your colleagues had no idea about your real mission or capabilities. Your integration into base operations was entirely authentic, which made your cover identity completely believable. Sarah realized that even her handlers, the people she believed were her Chinese controllers, were actually American intelligence officers maintaining her psychological conditioning while gathering intelligence about Chinese operations through her reports. You are, in fact, Admiral Sarah Chen, United States Navy, Admiral Richardson said, presenting her with classified personnel files. Your real rank and position have been held in deep classification while you operated undercover. You command the entire Pacific Fleet Intelligence Division. The final revelation was the most shocking of all. Sarah wasn't just a successful intelligence operative. She was one of the most senior officers in the Pacific Fleet. Her colleagues hadn't been mocking a newcomer. They had been unknowingly dismissing someone who outranked most of the base's leadership. Your psychological conditioning is now being reversed, Admiral Richardson explained. Over the next few days, your true memories and identity will be restored. The mission you've been unconsciously conducting has been one of the most successful intelligence operations in naval history. As Sarah began to remember fragments of her real identity and mission, she understood the extraordinary scope of what had been accomplished. Her infiltration of what she believed was American intelligence had actually been an infiltration of Chinese intelligence networks, providing unprecedented access to their operations and capabilities. The colleagues who had initially mocked her arrival would soon learn that they had been dismissing their commanding officer. Admiral Sarah Chen had returned from the most complex deep cover operation ever attempted, bringing with her intelligence that would reshape American understanding of Chinese naval capabilities. For years to come, the mission that had begun with mockery and dismissal was ending with the revelation that the quiet newcomer they had underestimated was actually the most powerful naval intelligence officer in the Pacific Fleet. Sarah's careful cultivation of relationships and demonstration of competence hadn't been part of an infiltration operation. It had been a gradual return to her rightful position of command. As her true memories began to surface, Admiral Chen reflected on the extraordinary complexity of the operation she had just completed. She had successfully maintained deep cover within Chinese intelligence, while secretly serving American interests, gathering invaluable information about adversary capabilities and intentions. The personnel who had initially questioned her qualifications would soon be saluting the admiral who had spent months working among them while conducting one of the most important intelligence missions in naval history.